At 7:03 on a quiet Saturday morning, the sound of a doorbell turned my routine. Driveway repair into a neighborhood showdown that would change everything. I had gravel on my hands, coffee cooling on the hood, and a simple plan: fix a crack before winter swallowed it whole. Instead, standing at my gate was Karen. Clipboard tilted like a weapon, smile sharp enough to cut. She said 3 words that made my stomach drop. "That's a fine." What followed wasn't just an argument about asphalt. It was a lesson in power, paperwork, and how quickly authority collapses when it meets facts. I bought this house for the quiet. The driveway came with it, cracked but serviceable. And I decided to patch it myself. No contractors, no noise, no mess. I checked the city rules, skimmed the HOA handbook, and even snapped photos of the before condition. By mid-morning, I was smoothing sealant when Karen marched closer, heels clicking like a countdown. She announced I violated community standards, claimed I needed prior approval, and demanded I stop immediately. I asked her to show me the rule. She flipped pages theatrically, pointing at a paragraph about structural modifications. My driveway, she insisted, was structural. I calmly replied that maintenance wasn't modification. Her face tightened. She warned me the fine would escalate by the hour. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Phones appeared. I felt the pressure to fold, to apologize, to pay. Instead, I asked for everything in writing. Karen didn't like that. She snapped photos of me, my tools, my house number. She threatened to call enforcement. I kept working, documenting every step, narrating dates and times into my phone. I remembered a simple rule: when someone tries to rush you, slow down and record. By afternoon, a notice appeared on my door. Bold letters announcing a violation and a deadline. The amount was absurd. The accusation was vague. And the signature? Karen's, not the board's. That detail mattered more than she knew. This wasn't about concrete anymore. It was about who decides what's fair and whether fear can replace proof. I closed my garage, saved my files, and prepared for the long game. Karen had made a move. I was ready to respond. The next step was patience, not confrontation. I organized screenshots, printed bylaws, and highlighted definitions like a student before finals. I emailed the board, requested a hearing, and CC'd myself. Every message stayed calm, factual, and dated. No insults, no threats, just clarity. Somewhere between the printer humming and the sun setting, my nerves settled. I realized this story wasn't ending at my driveway. It was beginning. Consequences arrive fast when confidence meets evidence, and cameras are already rolling everywhere right now. The email reply arrived 2 days later, short and carefully worded, as if every sentence had been weighed by a committee afraid of leaving fingerprints. The board acknowledged my request for a hearing and asked me to submit supporting documentation. That phrase told me everything. Karen's accusation needed backup, and they didn't have it yet. I spent that evening assembling my case like a detective pinning clues to a wall. Except my wall was a kitchen table buried under printouts. I started with the HOA bylaws, the same document Karen had waved around so confidently. This time I read every line. Buried under definitions was a sentence that felt like a lifeline. Routine maintenance, performed by the homeowner, does not constitute a structural modification. I highlighted it in yellow so bright it almost glowed. Next came city ordinances confirming that minor driveway repairs didn't require permits. I added timestamps, photos, and even receipts for materials to prove the scale of the work. Meanwhile, Karen didn't stay quiet. She walked the neighborhood, telling anyone who'd listen that I was ignoring the rules and setting a bad example. One neighbor warned me she was collecting signatures to make a point. Instead of arguing, I documented that too. Screenshots of messages, notes of dates, names, and exact words. Every detail went into a folder labeled simply driveway. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday evening via video call. When Karen joined, she looked confident, almost smug, sitting beneath a framed certificate that suggested authority without explaining it. She spoke first, repeating her claims with dramatic pauses, describing my repair as a reckless alteration that endangered community standards. She emphasized the fine, the urgency, the precedent. She did not mention the rule by number. When it was my turn, I didn't raise my voice. I shared my screen. I walked them through the bylaw definition, the city ordinance, and the photos taken before, during, and after the repair. I explained why I acted, how I verified the rules, and why I requested everything in writing. I asked one question at the end. Could they show me where maintenance became a violation? Silence filled the call. One board member asked Karen to clarify. She flipped pages again, hesitated, and admitted she interpreted the rule. That word changed the room. Interpretation without authority is just opinion wearing a badge. The board thanked us and ended the call, promising a decision within 48 hours. When the screen went dark, I exhaled for the first time in days. I knew I'd done the right thing, but winning isn't about feeling right. It's about proving it. And proof, once submitted, has a way of echoing longer than threats. 48 hours stretched into a tense silence that felt louder than any argument. Every email notification made my heart jump. I replayed the hearing in my head, wondering if I'd missed something, if confidence could still outweigh facts in a closed meeting. Karen, meanwhile, made sure the neighborhood knew she was waiting on the board. She smiled a little too brightly. Whenever we crossed paths, like someone already celebrating a victory. The decision arrived on Saturday morning. The subject line was neutral, almost boring, which somehow made it more powerful. The board had reviewed the evidence. They ruled the driveway repair was routine maintenance, not a violation. The fine was officially dismissed, but then came the part I didn't expect. The board stated that the notice had been issued without proper authority and did not follow HOA procedure. They announced an update to enforcement rules to prevent individual overreach in the future. I read that paragraph 3 times. Individual overreach was a polite way of saying Karen went rogue. Within hours, a second email went out to the entire community. It explained the clarification to the rules, apologized for confusion, and confirmed that no homeowner approval was required for basic maintenance. At the bottom was a final sentence. Any fees already paid under similar notices would be refunded. The message didn't name Karen, but everyone knew. You could feel it in the sudden quiet. The way conversations stopped when she walked by. That afternoon, my doorbell rang again. This time it wasn't Karen, it was a neighbor, who'd been fined the previous year for repainting his mailbox. He thanked me, genuinely relieved, and said he'd already contacted the board about his refund. By evening, 3 more neighbors had reached out. Stories surfaced. Small fines, vague threats, quick payments made to avoid stress. My driveway fix had cracked something bigger than concrete. Karen disappeared from her usual patrols. No clipboard, no photos, no lectures. Weeks later, a brief notice announced a restructuring of the compliance role, shifting enforcement to a rotating board review instead of a single point of contact. Authority was redistributed, quietly and permanently. The board followed up with me directly. They apologized, confirmed my refund wasn't needed since I hadn't paid, and thanked me for bringing a procedural gap to attention. That phrase made me laugh. A gap is just another word for a weakness someone hoped no one would test. Months later, the driveway had faded into the background of daily life, but the impact of that moment never really left. I noticed it every time a neighbor waved instead of whispering. Every time a small repair happened without fear of a knock on the door. The community felt lighter, like everyone realized the rules were meant to guide, not intimidate. That shift didn't come from anger or rebellion. It came from documentation and calm persistence. Karen eventually resurfaced, but not in the way she used to. Without the clipboard and unofficial authority, she was just another homeowner. Polite, distant, careful. The power dynamic had changed permanently. When systems are exposed, they rarely return to their old shape. Transparency has a way of removing shortcuts people quietly depend on. The board's rule update became a reference point. New homeowners received a clearer handbook. Enforcement notices now required multiple approvals, written citations, and direct references to specific clauses. Everything Karen had avoided. Complaints dropped, so did fines. What surprised me most wasn't the policy change, but how quickly people adapted once fear was removed from the process. I never set out to make an example. I just wanted to fix my driveway. But situations like this reveal something important. Many people rely on others not pushing back. They assume compliance is easier than confirmation. Most of the time, they're right, until someone slows down, asks for proof, and keeps records. Looking back, the moment that mattered most wasn't the hearing or the ruling. It was when I asked for everything in writing. That single request shifted the balance. Verbal pressure dissolves on paper. Intimidation struggles under timestamps. Authority without process collapses when exposed to sunlight. I shared the story online later, not to celebrate winning, but to show the steps. Check the rules yourself. Document everything. Stay calm. Ask for clarification. And never let urgency replace accuracy. The response surprised me. Messages poured in from people dealing with similar situations. From HOAs to landlords to billing disputes. Different settings, same pattern. The lesson wasn't about Karen. It was about systems and how easily they drift when unchecked. Rules don't enforce themselves, people do. And people make mistakes, misinterpret, or overreach. The fix isn't confrontation. It's clarity. Now, every time I park on that driveway, I'm reminded that small actions can have wide consequences. A patch of sealant turned into a policy change. A fine threat turned into refunds. One calm response reshaped a process that affected dozens of families. Entitlement collapses under documentation. Confidence grows with preparation. And sometimes the smartest move isn't fighting harder, but proving quietly that you're right. If you enjoyed this HOA showdown and want to see more epic Karen stories, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment sharing your own wild HOA or neighbor encounter. Don't miss out. More chaos is coming every week.